Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Ann Sumayel and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations. I wanted to begin our time together by sharing our land acknowledgement. Both the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University occupy the original homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor, respect, and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples forcibly removed from this territory, whose connection remains today. St. Benedict's Monastery and St. John's Abbey previously operated boarding schools for Native children. Now, students, faculty, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native Nation neighbors. Thank you. During this episode, there will be time for questions towards the end of the presentation. So if you have anything to ask President Bruess or Dean Piper, please click the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. To do so, you may need to exit out of full screen view in order to see the Ask a Question button. This session will be recorded and posted on our Alum Learning Consortium's past event recordings page in 2 to 3 business days. Now, please welcome our moderator for today's session, Heather Piper Olson, Vice President of Institutional Advancement.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for the second episode of St. Ben's at Home this fall. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome back President Brian Bruess. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Heather.
Oh, it's a really auspicious start. Also with us tonight is Cory Piper. Nope, we're not related. Who is the new Dean of Admission and Senior Admission Officer for St. Ben's and St. John's. Welcome, Cory.
Thank you.
So tonight's topic is a very important one, and we're talking about enrollment, and more specifically how St. Ben's and St. John's are addressing enrollment challenges by shifting towards a strategic enrollment plan. So we're going to unpack what that means first, but let's learn a little bit more about the person Brian tapped to help us begin to implement that approach, and that will better allow us to address the challenges facing higher education. Cory, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks. And thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. Yesterday marked 6 weeks of my new role here at St. Ben's and St. John's. I have dedicated my career to higher education, specifically in admission and financial aid. I love working on a college campus, but most importantly, I love these transformational years of college age students. So I'm just always pleased to be a part of that. I really do think college admission professionals have exciting work in changing students' lives. So that's my past. I've been at St. Kate's, as you know, for most of my career. I'm originally from Okoboji, Iowa, but I've been a long-term resident of Southwest Minneapolis. But it's been fun for me. I am renting a condo at the Lofts here in St. Joe, and
Right above Jupiter Moon there?
Yes, and I might have been to Jupiter Moon a number of times.
For those of you, if you haven't been to St. Joe recently, so many good things happening on the food and bev side.
100%. I'm just thrilled to be living in the community and participating in all the learning and discovery that is St. Ben's, St. John's.
It is the best thing about our jobs that we get to work with young people, isn't it? It keeps
100%.
us young, and it's just so hopeful. I would say it's the best part. You'd be so working with this generation, whatever generation comes through, just always reminds you there's a lot of hope for the future.
Absolutely. And the vibrancy of just being able to work on a college campus is unique and special, and one I just absolutely appreciate.
So what made this opportunity at St. Ben's and St. John's so appealing to you?
Right. So because I have a long-standing career in higher education in Minnesota, to be completely honest, I've had a, how should I say it? A
competitive love-hate?
No, actually, it's
admiration
for St. Ben's and St. John's from afar, because I would say and think to myself, that is a really unique setup with that St. Ben's and St. John's has with the partnership of the two schools. So I admired from afar. And then when President Brian Bruess offered the opportunity to come alongside him and serve in his administration and to support his vision. And after many conversations and meeting with some key people, it was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm excited for this challenge.
Well, we're so happy to have
Thank
you.
you.
We're glad you said yes. We have
Thank
a lot
you.
of folks saying yes
Thank
to the
you.
call, and we're so grateful that you did.
Thank you.
So tell us some things that you've already noticed about St. Ben's and St. John's that have delighted you.
Oh, that is such a great question. Love this question, and I love the word delighted. I have to say, on my very first day, I was able to go on a campus tour with a Benny and then a campus tour with a Johnny. And right away, just connecting with Emmy and Tom, I'm so impressed. And 6 weeks in, I'm continually impressed with our students. Remarkable young people. They're dedicated. They're curious. They're bright. Really impressed with the student body. I have to say, on my first day on the job, I sat down with the editor-in-chief of the Record, Jacob, and again, with Emmy, with Tom, and then having Jacob tell me in such beautiful words that a liberal arts education is making him a better human. I knew I was in the right place. I'm like, these students are incredible. So students have delighted me for sure. And the welcoming community, there is the Benedictine hospitality. I've experienced it every day. I have felt so welcomed and supported and encouraged. Kay, who's my assistant, who's just fabulous, keeps me updated on the number of onboarding meetings I've had, and to date I've had 141.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have met
in
so
6 weeks,
many.
folks. In
Yeah,
6
yeah,
weeks.
Yeah. It's been.
She needs a nap, not this particular episode.
It's been wonderful and just incredible to meet so many committed folks that have truly given their heart and soul to this place. So that's been impressive to me, and delighted to meet all these great folks. Also, I was delighted to working with my team to realize that we have 15 admission counselors who go out every day and promote the goods of St. Ben's and St. John's. Those 15 admission counselors are all alums. That is so unique and something I'm not used to. That is so special and wonderful. And it's a commitment to their love of place and love of their experience. So I love working with a team of Benny's and Johnny's. That's been incredible. And like I said earlier, just the community itself. This is a great place to live and work. So it's been fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Brian, filling this top leadership role was one of your first jobs as the new joint president. As you searched for someone to lead our admission operations, what were your priorities for the position?
Well, you're right. It is a really critical position. And if you haven't met Cory, when you do meet her, you're going to really enjoy working with her, knowing her. And I say that to all the alumni watching as well. But we really need two places this special need someone who not only has spent her career in admissions, but loves liberal arts, Catholic education. And you're going to see that and know that in Cory. We're also looking for someone who was an expert in the marketplace of the 5-state area, particularly strong with understanding the marketplace of Minnesota, both rural and Twin Cities, and who has garnered over 26 years, the respect of the high school counselors, of the Catholic schools, the public schools of our marketplace. So that was a key piece. Another one is we wanted someone with a sophisticated contemporary understanding of how you tell the story of two beautiful places like this. And someone who can do it in a way that is sophisticated, that's contemporary, that's data-driven. And my favorite piece about Cory's leadership is she's a phenomenal leader. So the team that she's working with is very talented. And it's that kind of a dynamic leader who believes, as do you, Heather, and so many people in the place. And when you have that sense of real passion, vocation for the work, you can't help but just fall in love with telling the story. And that's what we do in admissions and enrollment management. We tell the story, and and share the good news about these incredible places.
Build strong relationships. Yep, true.
And it's a critical position on so many levels. It's where our relationship begins with so many of our community members with the prospective students.
Right. So, I mean, we know this, but I think it just goes without saying as we sort of go into sort of the rest of this is why is it that admission and enrollment management is such an important part of our overall operations at St. Ben's and St. John's? And sort of what are your priorities for this, for Cory's role and sort of how we move forward in this?
Yeah, well, I think it is critical. And the reason it's so important is because a number of things. One, if it were just a simple time, it would be important because this is where we attract and create, present our value proposition to the world and bring people into the community. But with the headwinds we're facing from unfavorable demographics to affordability questions and tremendous 30-year decline in public support, financial support for higher education, increased competition, all these pressure points, and add a pandemic.
Yeah,
It has
just to add on top of that and everything
social
else.
unrest.
Why not? Right.
And
What's one more thing?
it has all of American higher education really forcing themselves to think hard about how do we do this and how sophisticated are we at doing it. As the competition gets more intense, we have to be more sophisticated using data and using evidence to build strategy and deploy dollars. And I would say that this is one of our most important lead strategies. We're 80% enrollment driven in terms of our expense architecture.
Right.
So much of everything we do financially, but also our essence.
Yeah.
You know, our entire purpose for existing is about create an educational enterprise that transforms students' lives and allows them to flourish. And so it's about the people.
Right.
And so we start there, the importance of this role.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've talked to us about, what's challenging about this and sort of the headwinds we're facing too. So can you just lay the groundwork? So currently, what is our enrollment at St. Ben's and at St. John's, and what's the significance of those numbers and what do they mean for the institutions?
Yeah, some of the hard pieces of this is that American education enrollment in American education has gone down by 3 million students in the last 2 years. So imagine that it's gone down by 3 million.
We knew this was coming, but it happened so quickly.
Yeah,
and the drop was significant.
But we have this fall, our census reported 3,144 students, total enrollment, St. Ben's and St. John's. Over the arc of time, however, if you go back 15 years, we've lost about 25% of our total enrollment. And that's in part because of the headwinds I just described. But also the competitive environment we're in and how we're responding to that. And so our goal right now is to rebuild some of that enrollment. It'll take a little bit of time to get back, but I think we need to recapture on the new student side about 100 to 120 students. And then we also need to recapture some of the retention losses that we had over the last 7 or 8 years. Those combined with maybe 200 or 300 more students in the total fold. We'll never get back to the number of 4,000. It's just not in the cards.
No, I heard there was a slight increase in the birth rate last year.
Right.
So 18 years from now, we might be doing a little better, but it's only about 6%. Right. So we'll see.
One opportunity we have that is special to note is that in this 10, 12 years, we've lost some share of the market in Minnesota. So there's some good evidence to suggest that we can regain some of that.
Right.
That and retention is really our primary strategy to rebuild and stabilize some of our revenue streams. And so that'll be a major initial focus.
Okay.
Also, too, did you hear on the news that Catholic enrollment has increased 9% in K through 12 over the last few years? So that's encouraging.
That is encouraging. It's a huge, so, I mean, that's obviously an obvious pipeline for us and a real opportunity as well.
One of the things I'm excited to see play out is I think the pandemic has taught us something. When I listen to parents and prospective students, they have a much deeper, especially our current students, a much deeper appreciation for what we do, the intensive in-person educational experience. So I believe our value proposition actually has a lift coming in the eyes of the general population. And I think that's part of what's driving the Catholic education enrollment in this region. We've seen some resurgences there, and that's a good sign.
Students, they want community, they want belonging, they want to be known, they want to be seen, they want to be heard.
So true.
That's what happens at St. Ben's and St. John's. it's
Yes.
already clear for me after 6 weeks.
Absolutely. We've talked too, just the differences and even how this year's incoming class
Yeah.
is sort of engaging and seeing that for sure.
The vibrancy is.
Right.
I've dubbed this class the show up class.
Yeah.
They have, every class has its own personality.
Yeah.
And this one, their levels of engagement. I've had faculty talk to me about they came to class ready to engage. The participation in clubs and organizations is off the charts. There's just a really wonderful vibe and a sense of excitement
Agree.
on both campuses.
I by living across the street from
Right.
I've been able to participate in evening programs. I've been to swim meets and football games. I went to was it beer bingo and Benedictine?
Yeah.
That was a blast. But also just this week I was at what is today? Thursday. Tuesday night was Diane Wilson, the author on campus. The room was full of Bennies and Johnnies.
Yeah.
When you said students show up,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
the vibrancy. It was great.
Yeah.
I was so impressed with that. So I agree. That's a
Yeah.
great way
Yeah.
to call this class too. It was neat.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I love that you're, able to really embed yourself in the community
Mhm.
too, because it does, you're practically neighbors. You're both
Yeah.
living in St. Joe.
Yeah, I can
So
walk and visit Brian and Carol.
Yeah.
Brian loves that.
It is awesome to be so close to the students and on campus.
Yeah.
And the Renner House where we are is right nestled in with the softball and soccer fields. And so there's always something going on, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting.
it's great. So you're both, you've both come from outside. You're both, experts in your field. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the national landscape of, in admission right now? We talked about the challenges, but why don't you just talk a little bit about, sort of the industry of admissions a little bit in your
Yeah.
experience?
Like Brian mentioned earlier, just the demographics, the numbers, things are changing. And so we in admissions in our everyday practice with encouraging students to raise their hand and come learn more, we have to be modern in our practices. We have to meet students where they're at. We have to understand the power of text, email, print, visits, social, really get our good message out because it's competitive. Our students apply to between 6 and 8 schools. We're one of those. So what makes a St. Ben, St. John's education distinctive? What is the community? What are our current students doing? What are our outcomes? We have to get the good word out everywhere all the time and just knock it out of the park. So yeah, it's
a competitive industry,
100%.
sophisticated, really. I mean, that's, I think too, this is sort of the days of, when,
Yeah.
it was just visits or phone calls is so different, right? I
Right.
mean, it's a sophisticated engagement marketing. There's a lot of noise and all of that as well. So
100%. And we know this absolutely what we coined admissions. This will be our 4th COVID class. Students are still moving slower
Yeah.
In the high schools. And we just need to realize that and get in front of them as much as possible with our visits and our engaging events on campus. And really, it comes down to relationship building, authentic relationship building. So when our admission counselors are working really closely and our coaches as well, and our faculty to really show that we care about you as a student and your future and why St. Ben, St. John's would be a good fit for you.
it's great. So Brian, I know you've engaged a consultant to help us learn a little bit about St. Ben's and St. John's are currently doing and what maybe there are some opportunities from a strategic enrollment management model. So how's that process going? What are we learning? And what are we going to do with the results?
Yeah, Jennifer Delahunty, who's just a wise owl in
And
the woods.
some folks may know that name because
Yeah.
once upon a time, she might have been somebody you worked with in admission.
Yeah, Jennifer Britz was her
Yep.
name back in the early 80s when she worked in admissions.
She's fabulous.
She's gone off and had just a really wonderful career as one of the wise owls in the woods that has worked in admissions and enrollment management, done a lot of consulting, but also held some really wonderful positions at the vice presidential level. We wanted to get someone on campus who knows us but has been away from a while, that
Right.
was an expert set of eyes to join our own look at things and asked her to specifically look at what we call strategic enrollment management, which is not admissions or nor retention, it's all of it. And so what defines strategic enrollment management is the holistic view of the arc of a student that begins when they're in middle school with brand awareness and understanding who we are. And then we engage them through admissions, their sophomore year in high school, increasingly more around affinity and introduce them to the place. They come here, we welcome them, we immerse them, and we deliver on the promise. They graduate on time, and then we move them to alumni status.
Alums for a lifetime.
Yeah. So this idea of strategic enrollment management thinks of it on that whole arc.
Yeah.
When we think of it in parts and functional areas, and we think of it as admissions, we've lost sight of really the power of thinking about it. And the other defining feature of a SEM model is the use of data and data analytics to drive and evidence to drive decision-making and deployment of resources. So Jennifer was invited to do a short consultancy. A friend of the two places do a short consultancy. She came for a week. She studied a data set for about a week, came for about 10 days, went away, did some more interviews, came back for another 10 days, and now has gone back to finish writing the report. We've asked her to look at the whole arc of the experience and give us some counsel about what we're doing is best practice and where are the opportunities to think systemically and seamlessly across this arc of the experience. So we're expecting her to give us insight into the discipline of admission, the work of retention, thinking about high impact practices, and what really defines a signature experience for St. Ben's and St. John's. And then how do we deliver that message of the value proposition? How do we really engage students and deliver on the promise? So we're looking forward to drawing on her insight, and we'll be distributing that insight to the relevant parties, Richard Ice and his team of academic and student development, the admissions financial aid folks, and we'll just be mining that. I can't tell the whole story of what she's sharing with us because that's our playbook.
Yeah.
I don't want that out on the
get it,
internet,
no.
right? But I can
There's
tell
a
you,
lot of people watching this
I know,
who
I
are,
know.
you know,
we got thousands and
what we're doing.
thousands of people streaming this. We'll be telling everybody our secrets. But in the next couple of weeks, we'll get the report from Jennifer, and that'll just be the beginning of an opening up. And it's about a constant renewal. And part of being in a competitive environment is understanding that it's like our mission. We understand it pretty well, but we can always understand it better.
Absolutely.
And so the discipline and the field of strategic enrollment management requires us to commit ourselves to continual renewal and understanding of how to be more sophisticated in the marketplace to outpace the competition.
Yeah.
And to do it authentically and genuinely congruent with who we are.
And we have such a distinctive experience to offer students. When you go back to the word delighted, one of another thing I have to say that I was just delighted was to get to know Jennifer.
Yeah.
She is a fabulous, not only is she a fabulous human and higher education professional, she is someone that I will consider always as a friend and a mentor now. I was able to attend many of her meetings with faculty and staff and students. It was just incredible. So I very much appreciated her presence on campus.
And she had
You
fun
and I
too.
met. She met with, I mean, I got to be with her too.
Yeah.
We met together. It was great. And
It was a homecoming for her as well.
it was
so
lovely.
Yeah.
It was so good.
She's
And I
great.
think what I love actually, what I think about the consultancy in this process too, is we have such amazing role models in the sisters around stewardship, really. And stewardship is for them, there's always been this constant continuous learning, right? I mean, you know that that's just at the heart of who they are and such amazing role models to us and for us. And we can always get better. There's always something to learn. Sister Coleman always told me, she's like, you know what? Like if I'm not learning, if I'm not changing my mind, if I'm not doing it differently, then, then I'm not actually living out my role and sort of what I'm supposed to be doing here too. And I do think it's about the stewardship of these places and this resource. So I think we can always get better and we can always learn something. And that's what hire is about. It's that continuous lifelong learning, right?
Meaningful work. Meaningful work.
Speaking of meaningful work and lifelong learning, can I put in a little teaser for the audience?
Sure, please do.
Because the work that we're talking about with strategic enrollment management and Cory's work and Jennifer's consultancy and the work that Richard's doing with his team is also kind of converging at a point we're going to launch strategic planning in February. And one thing I can assure you, there's very few things that a college president should have under the heading, "This I know for sure."
Okay.
But one of the things that I know for sure is that our strategic planning effort is going to focus at what I call the intersection of teaching and learning,
It's great.
and it's the student experience. And that's what we're presenting through admissions to the world. But the initial focus as we get ready for strategic planning is holding up that question. What is the student experience? What's distinctively St. Ben's and St. John's, and what can we do to make it more sophisticated, more powerful, to produce even higher order outcomes? And it's a real position of strength. And there is excitement and joy about that project itself. But coming soon
Coming soon. You'll be
to a
learning
program
more.
near you will
Yeah.
be the strategic planning conversation.
That's great. And it really, we do commit to making sure that our alums, donors, friends are going to be a part of that process and have lots of opportunities. So stay tuned. You'll hear from us for sure. I'm sure we'll be doing a St. Ben's at Home about this in the future. So that I know for sure.
Can I just say something super quick?
Sure.
Which I want our alums to know. And I don't want to embarrass Brian, but it is so incredible and unique to have a president who really understands
Right.
strategic enrollment, planning, financial aid, admission. It's incredible. And I just want all of St. Ben's and St. John's community to know how fortunate we are to have a president who fully understands this work and it makes it
You're too
exciting.
kind, now I'm blushing.
Well, it's true. He really does. I learn something from him every time he speaks on this topic, other topics too. But it's just a really special thing. St. Ben's, St. John's blessed to have a president who fully understands not only the
Absolutely.
importance of the work,
Yeah.
but the work.
But the work itself. Absolutely. We know you were well trained and you were
Right.
well prepared for this role. So
I am
we're
flattered
delighted to
by
have
it,
you.
and I'm flattered by that comment. Thank you. And I want to say that another thing I know for sure is that enrollment management is everybody's work.
You
It
bet.
is.
And it takes all of us working together, including our
Yeah.
alumni, friends, telling the story. Everyone has a role, and we'll talk a little bit about
We
that
will.
before the night's out, about how people can participate in this
Yeah.
collective effort.
That's great. So we, as we've already we're going to get the results, but we've already begun some of this work here. So, but as we really, broadly go into a strategic enrollment management, and we begin to make some of these changes, how long before we see a real impact or significant results from making this shift towards this model?
That's a great question. The way I look at it is that when you're focused, as we are,
Mhm.
on the student experience, prospective students and current students, as intensely as we are, the ROI is immediate.
Right.
Because we're lifting up students today in the retention strategy. We're lifting up students today in the enrollment
Mhm.
funnel for prospective students. It's also true that anything you do from a retention point of view today, introduce a program, it'll take a cycle to
Right.
really measure the output.
Right.
So in some ways, it takes a year to really know, because you got to measure what happened. And we'll do a lot of measurement in the coming years. But I think it's important to know that we're making immediate investments now that we think are going to yield results in this current cycle for next year, but even more so for 24 and 25, fall 24, 25. Most of the systemic changes that we make by way of policy or practice or investment take a cycle or cycle and a half to really produce. I would say we have some opportunity that most schools don't, to expect some early results or early returns because of the strength of the value proposition.
Right.
And we can talk a little bit about what we mean by value proposition a little bit, but it's not a remake. It's fine tuning and making more sophisticated something that's really working pretty well.
Agreed.
So, Cory, I know you've been busy already, 141 meetings. So let's talk a little bit about kind of admission. What are some of the new initiatives that the admission team is working on this year?
Oh, yeah, great question. One of the things that I was able to do in my time so far is to put forth a new organizational structure. And I actually launched that on November 1st, last week, which was a great day to do that. It's our fresh start. And I want to say that I have such great respect for those that came before me in this good work. I have such great respect for the veterans on the team who literally have given their heart and soul
Absolutely.
to this meaningful work. And I also have great respect for the newcomers on our team. We have about 5 or 6 fairly new staff who have committed to this charge of bringing new Bennies and Johnnies into the community. So we looked at our organizational chart. We changed some things up to how to be more effective and efficient. Every year, personally, I pick a word for the cycle, and the word for this year is the word urgency. We're going to be urgent in getting our acceptances out on the street. Urgent with getting merit scholarships with that acceptance letter. Urgent in getting our financial aid offers out to students and families in December versus waiting until January. Urgent in how we execute our event programming. Urgent in communication with students for all things, print, digital, email, social, text, calling. The word is urgent to really get in front of families and students to share the good news of what we offer at St. Ben's and St. John's. So those are a few things that I've been able to start in these few weeks. I'm doing a holistic review of all of our practices. There's so much good work that is happening, but I want to build on that as we go forth as a cohesive team.
That's great. So are there a few things you've identified in your short tenure that you really think make us distinctive in the marketplace?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the partnership itself and strong integration. This is a really, 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 these are great schools to be at. So that's distinctive in itself. The beautiness of the campuses. I mean, 7 Lakes, what?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's distinctive. Outcomes, number 1 and number 2 by Zippa on getting jobs. That is incredible. I mean, when we say come to succeed, our students come and succeed.
Yeah.
That is what a value proposition that is. Our residential communities, wow. I mean, just fabulous. I was able to attend the celebration of Flynntown and the new Nichols Bridge. I want to live in Flynntown.
That's what everyone says. When we built Centennial 2, it's always like, this is so much nicer than the houses I lived after I graduated. Well, we don't build them used. We built them new.
I know.
And they're beautiful.
But also the community of the campuses. I walk around. I was so impressed when I toured St. Ben's for the first time. Everywhere you turn, there is community, places for students to gather. Everywhere you look, you see pride in being a Benny. It's just fabulous. So very distinctive in community and belonging.
I think we did this, and no one quote me on this, but I know I'm close on this. But I think over the past 5 years, through the course of the Illuminating Lives campaign and our bond initiative, everything, I believe it's over 75% of the square footage on these campuses has been renovated, newly built, touched. I mean, it really, with the really serious intention of community gathering spaces. If you go in the main building, every set of offices has places for students to be and
gather.
Be together to one another. It's very intentional. If you haven't been on campus in a while, I highly encourage you to come. You won't recognize the HAB. I mean, it went from being exactly what it is in 1950s high school that would survive a nuclear attack to a place that has high tech, really built for engagement. And that's true kind of across all of these spaces as well. And the same is true at St. John's as they continue to make some.
It's so true.
Welcoming.
Right. And I'll even say, I think the food is awesome.
Okay. We know that's true. We know that's true.
Like,
Yeah.
we had lunch. I'm like, this is so impressive. And just
Another thing that I find to be really a great asset is that, and it relates to our audience, our alumni, is that the level of engagement that I see with students in the learning experience, the curricular, co-curricular, is off the charts. Even some of the national benchmarking stuff, the National Survey of Student Engagement has us really, in some really important ways, ahead of our peers. And part of what's driving that is a profoundly committed faculty and
Absolutely.
staff.
100%.
The way they stand up for students. And I'll give you an example of data that drives this kind of stuff. Last year, the St. Ben's retention rate went from first year retention rate went from 85 to 88.9% in a COVID year. Most private colleges saw drops in some schools averaging 3 to 5% drops. In one of the most challenging years of the history of the place, it went up by 4 percentage points. And that means that our faculty and staff are fully committed to our students, and the students are reciprocating by engaging actively in all facets of the student experience. That kind of culture around learning is almost impossible to create. You can nurture it and you can optimize it, but to have such a strong foundation is, I think, something that's very distinctive. And it's a real leverage for student learning and for attracting students and retaining students. It's just a great feature of these two places.
Yeah.
So
true.
let's talk a little bit about financing a college education just for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So we hear so much from politicians, lobbyists, industry experts, the media, I don't know, our uncles at dinner, about the costs and the value of higher education.
You were projecting
I
there, were you?
wasn't, no, my uncles are great and they're very
Your
excited
poor
about
uncles.
it.
Oh
No,
no.
well, you just say that, in our communities, like these are the
Yeah.
conversations we have. Like, why does it, why does it cost what it does? So we all know from our work that running a college costs a fair amount of money. So Brian, why don't you share some thoughts about the intersection of value and costs, how we're working to address those really important considerations? And, kind of to both of you, I would say too. So how are we helping prospective students and families have a conversation about the value of a college education?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. We could take a couple segments and do some graduate course delivery on this
Great.
topic alone.
Yeah.
I would say financial equilibrium and sustainable financial framework is one of our areas of focus right now. And that includes, we talked about new student enrollment retention. It also includes philanthropy. It also includes managing our expense architecture. So strong integration is going to create opportunities for us to look at all that. That's going to include a fair amount of innovation, because in order to be successful in a challenged environment, disruptive environment, you have to be innovating. You can't cut your way to excellence. And so we're in a position of strength. We're going to be managing our costs to keep our expenses as institutions in line. We're going to be advancing lower than typical tuition increases. We're going to be investing more and more in student financial aid, because we already make this exceptional education affordable for many, many students that would otherwise not be able to afford it, but we need to do more on affordability, so we'll continue to do that. It's going to require investment and to introduce more high impact practices. And so if we had pre-pandemic, almost 70% of our students studying abroad. Now, that's not the most important metric in the world, but it's a top 50.
So many of our alums say
Yeah.
it is the highlight.
It's-
And we
it's a-
see it as
yeah.
student employers. We see our students come back from study abroad. They are independent in ways they have not been. They can make connections, right?
And that
It
level,
matters.
that level of
So
engagement
right.
in study abroad is
Right.
remarkable. It's a top 25 number
Right.
in liberal arts education nationally. So as we come out of the pandemic, how do we return to that level? And even more importantly, how do we make sure the entire curriculum and co-curriculum is been given an infusion of internationalization? Whether you're studying abroad or not, we want our students to be really multiculturally competent and aware in a global sense. So it's those kinds of investments in academic programs and co-curricular programs. Cory mentioned the residence life programs, leadership, empowerment of women. This is the essence of who we are.
Right.
So we'll be investing in that. With regard to the question of cost and expensive, what it takes to run a place, it is expensive. It's become more and more our burden as private colleges to manage this, because there's a 40-year decline in state and federal support for higher education. Minnesota actually is pretty good. So around that issue, but we need to keep working on that. And that includes doing some myth busting.
Right.
I know we're coming off an election cycle. I don't want to get political, but I can take one shot at some of the politicians. many of the critiques we hear about the questions of the value proposition of education, is it worth it, are coming from politicians who many of them themselves and their children went to private colleges.
Right.
And so I think we have to put pressure on the public to think clearly and with evidence about what the truth is
Right.
about the power of education. We know that a healthy K-12 and a healthy higher education ecosystem creates a better society.
From all
health
levels,
outcomes.
the community college level, technical college, publics, privates, we are all better if we have that strength of that system.
Great
So I think-
citizens who give
yeah.
back.
Exactly.
And so we have to confront that narrative with facts and with evidence, and we have to turn the corner back to higher education being a public good, not a commodity. And if there's one message that I could carry every day, that would be the one that I carry around and do my stump speech on that, because that's, I think, the essence of what it means to really believe in education and to believe in what these young students represent. Great hope. If we really are committed to their flourishing so they can improve society for all economic development, social development, we have to commit to it.
Right.
We have to fund it and we have to support it. So I think those are some of the things, both macro and specific, that we're doing to confront that. And it also, for Cory and all of us, communicating the value proposition and helping families understand that it is affordable. So many people at top of mind don't even consider it because they think they can't afford a private Catholic, Benedictine, liberal arts residential experience. But the truth is, many do.
Right.
And the median family income for students here is less than the median family income for the University of Minnesota.
Right.
There's all sorts of data that we could talk about that would help make that case, but we have to communicate that. Starts in the admissions process, but it also starts before that. When we think about brand and brand awareness, and I think affordability, confronting willingness to pay and ability to pay and understanding affordability is probably our top challenge
Right.
in the marketing communication space.
So much to say though about the proof in the pudding.
Right.
90% of our students graduate in 4 years. That's fabulous. Our loan default rate on student loans is less than 1%. That
Right.
means our students are graduating and getting jobs
Right.
and are able to pay off their low
Absolutely.
interest student loans.
Mhm.
97% of our students are employed or in graduate school within a few months.
Top
of
1 and 2
graduation.
in the state, as you said right off
Number
the
1 and
bat.
2
Yep.
ranked for job placement. The proof is in the pudding
Yeah.
as far as outcomes, let alone everything that Brian mentioned, which is the 4-year experience of human growth and development.
And then a lifelong relationship with these institutions
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely.
And that I think is, you come for 4 years,
Mhm.
you are an alum for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And that is not the case. As you said, the Benny Jenny Network is real and it is there for you. And we are there for our alums at transition points throughout their life. So if you find us, give us a call, shoot us an email,
Yeah.
and Ann will make sure you know how to get a hold of us.
Can I go off of something Cory said about the loan default rate?
Sure.
It's one of the most important measures of quality. And it means a lot of things. It means first that the institutions are doing a good job managing net price and cost and affordability. It means that students are graduating on time. It means that they're getting jobs. And most importantly, it means that they value their education because they're paying off their loans. And about a third of our students graduate with no debt. And those that do have debt have an average of about $30,000. And so to have a loan default rate, if you look over the last couple cohorts, it's been often below 1%, as high as 1.5% for both institutions. The national average is about 12%. Four-year public universities average about 8 or 9%, privates about 4. Here we are at less than 2. And in cases less than 1%. That's a powerful statement, not just about affordability, but about quality and what families can expect by participating in this experience.
One of the best things that we can do, everyone can do, is to really encourage students and families to apply for financial aid.
Right.
And get that financial aid offer. That includes merit scholarships, need-based grants, St. Ben, St. John's, we guarantee every student an on-campus employment. That's incredible. Low interest student loans. I mean, there's ways to go about, student savings, students working in the summer and putting those dollars towards their
Absolutely.
future. There's lots of ways to make St. Ben's, St. John's education affordable. I know we're committed on this side
Absolutely.
to that
So
end.
to that point, I think, as always, alumni, parents, friends want to know what they can do to help.
Mm.
So we know 2 actions
Yeah.
that are help in tremendous ways are referring prospective students and giving financially in support of scholarships. So let's talk a little bit more about each of those. So Cory, tell us a little bit about referrals. What makes referrals so effective?
Oh, great question, Heather. Back to the word delighted that we just started with. I have also been so delighted to realize how involved our alums are. To know that 30% of our Bennies, 30% of our Johnnies have some alum connection. That's, again, incredible,
Right.
just amazing. So keep spreading the good word. Referrals, it's the best thing that we can have, is to share with a college-bound student your love of place, your great experience as a Benny or a Johnny, what it did for you in your life. It's gold to have students, alums who had a wonderful experience, share that with others and encourage the future classes, for sure.
The old adage that word of mouth is the best
Yeah.
form of advertising is true. It's also true that one of the opportunities we have for both institutions is to invest more in telling the story.
Yeah.
We're right now terribly underfunding our advertising, marketing, messaging piece. And so you're going to see, Cory was talking earlier about the multiple ways in which we do that. We're moving toward a more omni-channel approach. That's going to require a lot of different kinds of modes and sharpening of our message and delivering that. And a very key part of that are our alums. That's actually the core.
Yeah.
That's the piece we're going to leverage even more in the coming years.
So no 2 alums, if you're not necessarily seeing more on social, things like that, unless you've got college age kids or yourself are one, you may not see more from that particular area. But if you are and do share like that, definitely you'll see more. So spread that message as well. So let's talk about the importance of scholarship support. Alums, friends, this is where you can always help by supporting the annual fund or giving to scholarships at St. Ben's. Brian, what would it really take for us to truly have a competitive advantage in this area?
Well, first of all, this is an area where we're really, really strong. The Empower campaign and all the other ways that we've been raising money and giving to scholarships is really quite compelling. And nowadays, I think the way schools that really differentiate themselves are the ones that can garner enough resources, often in the form of an endowment, which means it's for intergenerational equity for the long haul. If we could carve out a strategy that would build a large enough of an endowment to more fully fund the unmet need of our students.
Right.
So they're highest ability students that have the most difficult socioeconomic circumstances, but have lots of ability, helping them afford this education more on a more consistent basis. As we've said, we've already made it affordable, but we need to be even better at that.
And that's really
Giving
who
more
we served
people
from the
more
beginning,
access.
true.
Yeah.
We talk about, we talk about actually the monastics. Really, when you think about Catholic higher education, there was this living endowment that was the monastics, and it was their vocation to serve students for whom this kind of education was just impossible without that kind of support. So many of our alums talked about it being really a situation where it was cheaper to send their daughter here than it was to keep them at home, and or the support that the sisters provided to make it possible. And now we really are, and we need our alums. That torch has been passed to them to make sure that this is possible for the next generation.
And one of the things I find really important to remember in this topic is that for some students and families, coming or not depends sometimes on $500.
Right.
It can be that
Simple as that.
simple as that. So that means that every gift, every contribution matters, because for some students that will make a difference for them coming. And that's not something I just say. I've seen many examples of that.
We get all the letters, or most of the letters from our students, the thank you letters to donors who
Just
pass through
incredible.
us.
Yeah.
We actually got one recently from a mom, talking about how what the financial support that donor had
Yeah.
provided did for their family.
Right.
I always forget that sometimes too.
yeah.
Of course, I get choked up. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
any
yeah.
event with Heather if she didn't cry. So on that note, let's
Heather,
hear.
that
so
we'll hear
great.
from people, but
Yeah.
that's why we do this.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so,
It
it's,
is.
it's our essence
Exactly
of who we
right.
are.
It
It's
is.
why we do it. And that's the power of giving even a little bit. It can have that kind of an impact
does.
on a person, but on a family system. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's just awesome.
It's the best part.
Mhm.
So let's hear from the audience. You've heard enough from me for sure. So Anne, do we have any questions
We
for anyone
do.
listening?
We do from Gwen. It seems like President Bruess and or Dean Piper, I just promoted you.
That's okay. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Fine, Cory. Dean Piper have been at many student, staff, and faculty events during their brief time at CSB and SJU. Do they ever get a day off?
Oh, what a great question.
Cory's been in 6 weeks. I'm in month 5. That's a great question. What I would say, two things. I'd say this. Those events are so engaging and so they give you hope. When you're
Yeah.
interacting with students, this is why we're doing it. So it's actually not exhausting. It's actually invigorating.
True.
I was teasing a friend the other day that if you're the president of a college, you get a certain number of vacation days. If you're a president of 2 colleges, you get twice the number of vacation days. So
That is not how strong integration works.
that's not how that works.
Not how
Oh,
it
darn
works.
it.
Sorry.
But thank you for the question.
Yeah, agreed. I just get such, it just breathes life into you to be
That's absolutely true.
on campus with the students, with faculty and staff. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
That's good.
Yeah,
You can sleep later.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions, Sam?
Yes, Jen from the class of 1995. You mentioned needing to recapture some of the retention losses. Can you talk about what kind of retention losses we experienced and how might you propose we recapture those students who might otherwise leave?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So if you look longitudinally at the 2 institutions, for years, St. Ben's and St. John's had very strong first-year retention rates. St. Ben's has always been a little higher in the 90, 91 at their peak. St. John's 87, 88. In the last 6 years, they've dropped to the mid 80s. And I mentioned earlier how St. Ben's bounced up to 88.9. Based on what I see on the ground, the experience, and the quality and the commitment of the faculty and staff, it belongs at 90%.
Right.
And so what we need to do to help make that happen is, because we have so many pockets of excellence and so many high impact practices already at play, the foundation's there. So what I think we need to do to kind of sustain that at the 90% is to leverage more data and more evidence. 90% of students who do not return for a second year in private higher education decide in the first 6 weeks of the first year. That means institutions have to be more nimble and adaptive and get to the faculty and staff more insight and do less autopsy work. After
Right.
students left, you're looking back why they leave.
Mhm.
Anticipate and predict these students will have these types of problems early and get to them before it's a problem.
Because we're going to intervene no matter what. Let's intervene early.
Sooner.
Right.
And so that means creating a little bit more of a sophisticated infrastructure
Right.
around data analytics, and how we engage our faculty and staff so we can anticipate the challenges. The other thing that's required is they have to be more adaptive. That's one thing the pandemic taught us. We can be more responsive if we encourage ourselves and allow ourselves to do that. Those 2 things alone, I think, will help us maintain that upper 80 space. And if you move from 85 to 89 over the course of 4 years, you're talking, several $1 million of net tuition revenue we can drive back into the enterprise in salaries, in new programs. And frankly, the reason to do it is not the money. The reasons to do it is because every student we admit, we know they can succeed.
Right.
And so we just have to get more sophisticated in understanding what those challenges are that they're having.
In addition to that too, it's important for the admission office to come back in to this process when students do leave, to reach out to them and say, if you're not engaged elsewhere, come back.
Yeah.
Because we care so much about you. We
Mhm.
want you to complete. So we have
Re-recruit.
re-recruit for re-enrolls. Really important as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
We have time for one more question. We have a question from Tanya. She says, given the importance of experiential learning, that includes study abroad, research, co-op, and internships, and the outcomes as they relate to families' choice of a college for their student. Do you have any plans to grow the research / co-op and internship programs at CSB and SJU to equal the outstanding study abroad opportunities?
Really good
I
question.
don't know who asked that question, but that's a brilliant
So
question.
It's a
is.
great question. I think I know who asked it.
Yeah.
I will say this. I mean, I think one of the things that we're doing, there's lots of initiatives. So Angie Whitney and Lindsay Gutch and Kevin Clancy sort of are all together right now. So study abroad, study abroad, experiential learning, and our undergraduate research are all co-located. And so we're having lots of conversations about, again, sort of how do we create that integrated experience, and elevating that as well. And I will say one of the things when I think around internships and growth in those areas, we continue now. I mean, the pandemic was challenging. I think we learned a lot too about sort of how can we bring our students to places and have really meaningful internships when they couldn't go in. And so we've learned now what they can look like in a virtual environment, but then are even more committed to making sure that our students can get into those spaces. So it is an area where we're continuing to grow and elevate. And I think research is a great opportunity for us to continue to grow. We have a newer sort of a pilot-ish program called the Emerging Scholars Program, where we're trying to create research opportunities in the first year for students who are typically underrepresented in scholarly research. They have faculty mentors and are doing that work. So some of that work is really around what we can fund.
Yeah.
We have things like the Fleischhacker Fellows who create lots of opportunity for funded summer internship programs. That endowment is created between that and our other summer fellows. We had over 80 students who had funded summer programs, and high impact internships. So there's a lot more to come there. And maybe in the future we'll have Angie. I think we've had Angie on before, but we'll continue to do that too. But I do think it's just absolutely vital. It's how we connect what they learn in the classroom with the real world, and better leveraging our alums and other community partners as well. And there's some stuff even locally that we're talking about, I think, with healthcare, and growing opportunities for our faculty and students to be truly engaging in meaningful work. And I think there's real opportunity too, knowing that there's workplace shortages all over the place. How can our students get that opportunity, but also be a part of some solutions as well?
We also have two other things I'd like to mention. We have a project right now underway with the faculty and student development teams that are looking at these high impact practices and trying to identify what's signature about this. And the question has a lot packed
very
into
much
it.
in that.
And it's that space that they're looking at to see how can we optimize that, do more of it or do something different with it. That's one thing that's underway already. Is a part of the readiness phase of strategic planning. The second thing that is an opportunity for us is I think we could do more by way of procuring more federal grants. There's a fair number of federal grants right now that are available around collaborative research, particularly in the sciences. And so I think I've had some experience with that in the past, really getting an infusion of federal dollars that's at the intersection of high impact practice, collaborative research, even fully funding some scholarships. So that's another area that we have to dive into that I think has some promise for us.
Yeah. So I think even I'll just say too, even just the small areas, I think some of the work that we've been doing with our Native Nation revitalization work, really, really valuable research that we are working with Native Nation partners. They need archival exploration, research on wild rice, creating protection for wild rice harvesting lands, those kinds of things. What we provide are students, people, faculty who are really engaged in that work. And for partners who know what they want done, know what they need done, but don't have the resource to do it themselves. And those are really, really important internship opportunities. And that's just one small area where those partnerships are super meaningful and it's mutually beneficial. Very much for the common good.
Yeah, what a great example of collaborative research with faculty and students that's making a big difference in the community.
Absolutely. So Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to end. Unfortunately, it is all the time that we have for this evening. Brian, Cory, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, especially during this very busy time and your onboarding process. Cory, you were a great sport to do this so early in your
Does this
tenure.
count
We're
as
so grateful.
142?
It does.
Is this 142?
Thank you.
Very
Thank you
good.
for having me. I
Yes.
learned a lot tonight too, so it was great.
Great. So, and thank you to all of you for joining us. We are so grateful for your engagement, your questions, your thoughtfulness as always. So we'll be back in the spring with more exciting episodes and new people to meet. So please stay on for final comments and details about what's coming next for St. Ben's at Home from Anne Tumongo. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you again, Brian, Cory, and Heather, for your time this evening. Audience, you can share additional questions or comments on tonight's episode through the evaluation form that will be emailed to you by the Alumni Relations team. This concludes our episode tonight of St. Ben's at Home. We'll be back in the spring with special episodes introducing you to some new faces on campus and giving you special updates and important news from CSB. You can find additional details about the St. Ben's at Home series on the landing page listed here. We will also share this link in the evaluation email you'll receive soon. Thank you all for attending and have a great night.